In this episode, we're going to be featuring a conversation that I had with a friend of the podcast, Nate Skelly, on his podcast. You can connect with Nate at nateskelly.com or look up the Financial Pathway podcast. Now, enjoy this conversation that I had with Nate.
Luke Clayton, welcome back to the podcast.
I'm back, and I'm ready. It's time. It's been I don't know how long it's been. I don't keep score. For the record, You keep score. You've given me some grief before for not having you on my podcast enough. So
I think you've had me on your podcast I think once a year, and I know we've done at least one podcast. I think two. So maybe this is your third appearance back on the podcast, but that would be rarefied air because I think maybe only my dad I've recorded 3 podcasts with before. So you should actually feel honored by that.
That actually is, to be on the same level as Dr. Kurt Skelly at all that's an honor in any way.
Yeah, he's my dad. I know him in real life. He's really not that great, so that actually is not that great of a compliment.
Yeah, he's great from the pulpit, but behind the scenes,
a little bit overrated. Yeah. And I know he's listening to this too, so I got to be careful now what I say.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, hey, sir, we love you. Only nice things to say.
Yeah. Well, Luke, I wanted to have you back. We have a lot of overlap in the fact that we both run businesses, and really they're solo businesses. We do have some help, but as far as we're not in some larger corporate structure. We're not in ministry specifically, although a lot of the work that we do overlaps with people who are in ministry. But what I wanted to do is just have a conversation about tools and methods and tips and tricks that you've discovered for time management, for productivity. And I think no matter who's listening, no matter what job you're in, these are things that would be helpful for everybody. Let's start here. Just tell people, for those who are not familiar, tell us about what you do and your business.
Yeah. So I am essentially a creative professional is kind of the broad term. And I've been in business now as Must Increase Media for 8.5 years, I want to say. Or wait, hold up. Nope. Yeah, that's it. Like the number matters. I just wanted to be right for my own sake. But so I will say probably the biggest mistake that I made early on was not being focused enough on a particular service. And so I kind of started as just like, hey, because my background is I used to work for a church as a creative media director. And so I just kind of said, hey, if you are a business, specifically though a church, and you need help in anything creative, graphic design, video, website, blah, 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 fill in the blank, I'm your guy. So I cast a super wide net. And the drawback on that is, like I said, I didn't necessarily focus in on one service and really, do the most I could for that one thing and maybe master a skill. The positive side, though, is that over the years, it really has helped to be a one-stop shop for the churches that I do work with. So if they need design and website and video, and now even I'm doing more with podcasting, they can essentially get the vast majority of their actual service from me. So that's what I do. I am focusing a little bit more now on a lot of the podcast production side of things. That has just really taken off. A lot of people are calling the 2024 presidential election the podcast election because it had such an influence seemingly on the outcome. And so podcasting is bigger now more than ever. And so I've helped a lot of people start their podcast. I've helped a lot of people maintain their podcast and their YouTube presence and things like that. So I'm really diving into that more as I go into the new year. But yeah, that's
tell us a little bit more about that. Like you mentioned, first it was like, I'm trying to do everything media related. Mm-hmm. And then over time you've learned, I'm trying to get more specific and lasered in on what I do well. Like why? Like what was the evolution of coming to that realization? How did you realize that trying to do more was actually less?
Yeah. So, I mean, I guess one of the most simple way to answer it is, well, it's like they say, you can be a jack of all trades, but then you're a master of none. And so I kind of found that being my issue. The other thing was, if you're going to scale a business, especially if you're going to do it on your own, I presently don't have any full-time employees. I've taken that approach in the past, and maybe we can talk about the shortcomings and potential benefits of that later. But I'm currently just on my own in terms of I have some contract helper people that I contract work to, but it's just me. If you're going to scale in any way, you have to have effective, more or less, and replicatable, if that's a word, systems and processes. Yeah, we're going with that. TM. So you have to have those processes that you can replicate, you can duplicate. And when you're doing that for so many different types of, in my case, different services and service offerings, well, it becomes really difficult to manage all of those, build and manage all those systems. So for me, it's been about, this is actually something I can do, that I have a very effective system and process with the podcast production, for example. Everything from, setting a date to record, to getting an editing workflow, to getting a thumbnail designed for the YouTube channel, and then uploading and scheduling everything. I've got a good pipeline for how that works now.
Right.
And to me, why I've chosen to focus on that one, particularly at least for 2025, if not beyond, is that is the one that I can get kind of the most return for time invested. And it's also a great value for the end customer, in my opinion. So that's essentially. Now, that said, the only reason I'm able to do the podcasting thing now is because for a lot of the other things I mentioned with the websites and maybe graphic design services, I've already built systems that are in place that are running well. So now I can kind of move and focus on the next thing. It just early on, it took me a while to figure out that you kind of got to focus in on one. It's not that you can't, it's just ideal. If you can kind of focus in on refining and perfecting as best you can one system at a time, then moving on to the next. So that's kind of my short and then long answer of why I'm taking the approach I am now.
Yeah, I think, and to extend that to, whether you listening are running a business, or you're in ministry, or whatever you do, there's an element of, like, there's a lot of fear. It feels very scary to say, I'm actually going to focus in on this, and I'm not going to do all this other stuff, because you feel like you're losing out on opportunity. I'll just similarly speak from personal experience. I'm in that same evolution for myself, and I can't say that I'm doing a great job of it now, because I think my struggle for where I'm at is I just want to help people when it comes to finances. Mm-hmm. I want to give advice. I want to be able to offer my services. And the thing that I find hardest to do is to tell people, no, it's not a good fit. Because I feel like I'm being a jerk. Somebody reaches out to me and they're like, hey, I'd like to get, and it's like, that's not really what I do, or that's not the right fit. That's not going to be mutually beneficial. That's not going to be maybe my area of expertise. And I think what you're speaking to is like now, like with the podcast production. So you build a routine and a workflow that actually you're really good at now. And it actually stands out and it differentiates you, because now somebody that needs that specific thing, it makes it a lot more obvious to them that you're the guy. Whereas opposed if you said, well, I do podcast production, but I also do these 12 other things. Okay, well, I don't need those 12 other things. I need this one thing. Mm-hmm. And what it actually, and weirdly, I think and this is something that in the finance industry, with what you do, with a lot of things, when you focus in on that one thing, you're actually making it easier for a lot of people to say yes, because to begin with, a lot of people were already saying no. We just didn't realize it. And I think that's part of the realization. Okay, so as far as time challenges, you're running a business by yourself. What have been the biggest challenges that you run into as far as time management for yourself?
Yeah, so probably for me, I could say a lot of things. Some days It's things like, oh man, I'm tired, I want to take a nap. So when you're self-employed and you're working from home, that temptation is actually a lot more real than if you're like in an office with other people keeping you accountable. But I'm usually able to resist that one pretty well, just drink another cup of coffee and move on. But in all seriousness, the one that I probably struggle with most, and I've got a pretty good balance of it now, is I'm in the service business, so I'm serving clients, but I also, it's the work in the business versus work on the business thing,
Mhm.
but I've also got to do things to, like I talked about earlier with those systems, building those, managing those, making those, keeping those efficient, because you can't really just, in my experience, build a system and leave it alone. You've got to like keep an eye on maintenance, make sure it's running right, make sure things aren't broken. So it's working on the business, and then, obviously we're finding time to do things like, we're recording a podcast right now. I've got a podcast that a co-host. I've got several podcasts now that I'm managing for other people. Like, okay, I've got to find time to work with those clients, but also got to find time to record stuff for my own podcast. And then I got to find new clients. You can't just, sit and not grow and not, find more clientele. So,
Right.
I've got to come up with marketing strategies and time to, have sales calls and things like that. So, that's been the thing. And the way that that's been the problem. My solution to that for the most part has been, I have days that are dedicated to working on the business, and I have days that are dedicated to working in the business. So, for example, Tuesdays, Wednesdays, Thursdays, middle of the week tends to be when I'm doing a lot more client management. I'm working on their projects and editing for them and having meetings. I only take, for the most part, with some exception, only take calls and meetings during those 3 days. And then Mondays and Fridays is more often my work, I guess would be on the business days, where I'm, working on the systems, developing things. And then likewise with that, I lean heavier to focusing on deeper work like that in the mornings. And then in the afternoons, like I said, that's when I do my meetings and my calls and things like that. So that's kind of my little rubric, if you will, of how I work on the things.
On the Mondays and Fridays, when you're entering more of that creative space and you're thinking more about the things that need to be done to move your business forward, like that's really important work, and it's really valuable work when you think in terms of, the return on your time. What's helped you to get into that space? Is there a routine? Are there tools? Are there little tricks that you've used to be like, okay, I want to lock in on a Monday morning and really think about what I'm going to do in 2025 to bring in 10 new clients or whatever, what's helped you to enter that space and feel like I'm getting really effective and I'm shutting out all the other distractions?
Yeah. So in general, that probably comes down more to my daily routine as opposed to what I focus on just those Mondays and Fridays. Because regardless of if I'm, working on my business or in my business, I need to be in that certain headspace regardless.
Mm-hmm.
So again, I talked about how I protect my mornings. My mornings are, those are for me to work. It's not for me to talk to people, not for me to take phone calls, get some exception to that, but by and large, that's that more. So for me, it's having the same Monday to Friday schedule every day. Because again, the temptation when you're self-employed, I remember when I first started, I was like, man, this is the greatest. I can stay up late watching movies, doing whatever. And then I can just wake up whenever I want to the next day because, hey, I don't have a boss now. I'm self-employed. Well, about 6 months into that, I realized that's just not going to work. And so now I get up earlier than I did, ever did when I actually went to an office. And so for me, it's, I get up, I do make sure to do, most days I try to do some type of exercise, get the blood pumping. I get ready, take my daughter to school, and then I usually find myself at a coffee shop. I got a Starbucks here near my daughter's school. That's where I start my morning. And most of the time I'm there until around lunchtime before I head home and then take my, like I said, if I've got any calls for the day or anything like that, that's what I do. So I guess for me, it's a little bit of a different answer than maybe what you asked. But for me, it's about every day making sure I have that routine, because it doesn't matter what I've got to do for that day. I'm finding myself in a place that, like, for the thing for me is the coffee shop. That's like focus place for me. Like, you know, I know there's other people around, but there's something for me about like smelling the coffee, drinking the coffee. You know, I can just really drill in and focus in on doing work there. So that's kind of how I get in that headspace.
You said earlier, like when you started the business, I was like, oh, great, I don't have a boss. You know, I have a lot of flexibility. But then ultimately, you've come back around to having a pretty structured week, and maybe even more structured than a manager might, more structured than a manager might impose on you, that you've imposed on yourself to say, I'm only going to do this on these days, and this is going to be my routine. Talk to me about like that process of like kind of coming full circle to being like actually having to become your own manager.
Yeah. I mean, in a nutshell, it just comes down to realizing I kind of grew up. I mean, that's really what happened. Was, like I said, when I first started my business, I would have been like 25 years old. I'd really only worked one job, which was at the church I was at. I'd had some summer jobs and, you know, dabbled in some, you know, kind of, I guess, work while I was at college, and, you know, did things like that, but not a serious, you know, 40-hour a week, you know, 9 to 5 or whatever you want to call it job. So I didn't have a ton of work experience. And again, like, this is more about my personal life, but yeah, I was kind of a mess. You know, I was unhealthy. You know, at one time I weighed over like 350 pounds, you know, and didn't care what I was eating, didn't care about, you know, I remember my first year working, I was working at a church, but also that had Christian school. So I had to teach. And I mean, I'd kill myself staying up till 2 and 3 in the morning, getting ready for, you know, preparing my lessons and things, which I thought, I patted myself on the back so hard for that. You know, I'm like, wow, look at you. Like, you're so dedicated. But it's like, yeah, but you're killing yourself. Like, you're not getting any sleep. And again, I'm eating and not taking care of my body and whatnot. And so all that to say, like, it's a few things happen. One of the things is I had a kid. Like, you have a kid and you realize, oh, here's this tiny little life form that is now dependent on me. And so just a combination of a bunch of things, realize I have to grow up and I have to get disciplined. I have to take care of myself and take care of, because by taking care of myself, I'm taking care of my family, I'm taking care of my business and everything from there. So that's kind of what I guess, probably more of a philosophical broad answer than what people might be looking for. But the biggest thing I tell anybody is I really wish that the person I became in my late 20s and early 30s, that I could have activated that earlier, which is just simply, again, you have to be disciplined for the health of yourself and those around you, and, you know, your work and all of that, and take life seriously. I mean, you knew me in college. Like, I still love to have a good time, but, you know, there's sometimes where it was like, Luke, dude, like, do you have a serious bone in your body? And so yeah, I just had to grow up. Growing up really helps.
Well, what I'm hearing in all of that is, like, you have to take your own success and discipline more important. Like, it has to be more important to you than it is to somebody else. And I think what I've seen in my very limited experience, but I think the great blessing of being in business for yourself is that there's a better system of check engine lights for what needs to change. When you're in a job, when you're in an occupation where, if you're not performing up to your own standards or to your own capabilities, the negative results of that are dulled. Then there's not a lot of motivation to want to change. In other words, like when I was a teacher, right? Like, if I wasn't performing as a teacher and doing the things that I need to be the best type of teacher I could be, that might show up in parents, complaining. That might show up in evaluations from the school principal being, subpar. That might show up in having more difficulties in class with disruption from students or those types of things. Like, there might be some things, but it wouldn't affect me personally all that much, because my paycheck is still going to be the same, and I'm still having to show up at the same times every day. And so the negative consequences of me not having that personal discipline are muted. They're dulled for me. And I
Yes.
think what happens a lot of times is people are in situations where they're just not even realizing that. They have an employee mentality where it's, okay, what's the bare minimum requirement of me in this job? And as long as I'm meeting that, I'm happy.
Mhm.
But similarly, on the converse side, the rewards for overachieving can also be dulled or can be negated somewhat, because it's
Yeah.
like, if I was the best teacher I knew how to be, and I was phenomenal in my lesson plans and in my lectures and all of that stuff, okay, but I still have to be there at the same time. And my
Mhm.
pay is probably still going to be the same. Now, maybe, right,
Mhm.
hey, you're doing a great job, and you give you a raise or whatever. But like, the upward mobility of that is also is also limited. And I
Yeah.
think what you realize immediately when you go into business for yourself is, wow, I reap all the benefits and the
Yeah.
consequences of
Yep.
my day.
High risk, high reward.
Yes, and you feel it, and the feedback's immediate. Like you
Yeah.
feel it in real time. And I think that's one of the greatest blessings and lessons that we learn in this is you start to realize, oh, there's things that I was doing before. It's like, why are you doing that? Like,
Mhm.
that's not a good use of your time. When
Yep.
you have that employee mentality, it's kind of like, well, I'm just, running out the clock. I'm doing
Exactly.
busy
Yep.
work for the sake of doing busy work. And then all of a sudden, when you realize, oh, I have nobody telling me that I have to do this, why am I doing this? And I think that's what I'm hearing in your answer is,
Mhm.
okay. So let's move here really quick. I want to get into what are like specific tools that you've used and that you've loved for efficiency, for time management. Give us a few things that you're using right now that you would say, man, this is awesome. Whether you're in business for yourself or not, that's like, you need to check this out.
Yeah, yeah. So, if you've listened to me, if there's any crossover audience from my podcast, YouTube stuff, you've probably heard some of this before. And I know, Nate, you and I, we've talked about this before. So if I'm repeating it, oh well, it's probably because you need to hear it. I'm going to start with, it's in no particular order, but for me, Calendly is really great. Calendly is a game changer. So managing your calendar is a nightmare. I used to do it manually. Like, if somebody were to reach out to me and be like, "Hey, let's get on a call." Okay, cool. I'm free at this time and this time. And then they're like, "Well, no, me, I'm this will work, but that won't work." And it's just it's such a headache. So I've set up a Calendly. They have a free version. I use the paid version because I've got because then it allows me to create different types of kind of events and things like that. And so I just send somebody a link and I say, "Hey, yep, I'd love to talk to you. Here's my calendar." And it's not just eliminating the back and forth. It's just allowing me to manage my time, manage my time without me having to think about it. So all those restraints I told you about, where I don't do talk calls on Mondays and Fridays, and I only do them in the afternoons, that's built in. Like, it's not going to
Right.
show an availability on Monday or Friday. It's not going to show an availability for anything before noon on Tuesday through Thursday. So that for me is huge. Like, I use it. I can't remember the last time I used just manually talking to schedule something. Even for like this podcast conversation, Nate, like we sent you, it was a Calendly portal, and we picked the time, and boom. So it is, that for me is gonna, like, I guess it's gonna lead the way, because it's the one for me that consistently is a reminder to me of, oh wow, like, if I had to manage that, I think that's the how you value something is, okay, what would I do without this? Without
Yeah.
this, like, it would be a nightmare.
Yeah, I use Calendly too. It's worth every penny. Another thing that I love about it is you can build in a workflow to
Yep.
send reminders, or if it's
Yep.
something where it's like, okay, in preparation for this meeting, I'm going to need A, B, and C, so that can be sent with that link. So
Yep.
you can like, if you're doing the podcast recording, it's like, okay, we schedule it, and then it sends a reminder email to me 24
Yes.
hours ahead of time or an
Yep.
hour ahead of time. And so even just following up with people and being like, hey, we still good for such and
Mm-hmm.
such time, even that gets
Yeah.
eliminated. Yeah, huge help. I love that.
Yeah, my Calendly reminders, I have those. I mean, it's probably annoying to people who schedule a meeting with me, but the truth is my no-show rate is incredibly low.
Yep.
Because if you don't do a reminder, like, honestly, there's a 50-50 shot they'll forget and won't even show up. So I do text reminders, I do the email reminders, and like you said, yeah, even follow-up emails. So like after the fact, I can automatically send an email that says, hey, thanks for your time. If you want to, if we need to talk more, here's a link to schedule another time. Like there's endless possibilities, really. So yeah, Calendly is a winner for sure.
Wouldn't it be nice to be able to not only see the quality of work of someone you're about to hire, but actually know and get an idea of how it is to work with them? And in other words, not just to see what they do, but how they do it, and if it's a good fit for a working relationship with you. Well, when it comes to working with my team at Increase Creative, that's exactly what we allow you to do at no cost and no risk to you. You could start your first custom design at no cost to you, and you only pay if you actually like the process and you like the final product. You can get started with your first custom design for free at increasecreative.co, and you only pay if you like what you see. So to get started, again, head over to increasecreative.co. That's increasecreative.co. Start your first custom design for free and only pay if you like what you see.
Let's move on now to what's the next one you've got for us? Time saving tools.
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's like I said, they're not necessarily in any particular order. So the next one I'll mention again, it's like I feel like I've talked about it so many times, but it's that good, is Loom. Loom, there's also some alternatives. Like I've also used I have Dropbox, which I could talk about Dropbox in and of itself. It's great for file storage, but Dropbox has something called Dropbox Capture that's very similar. I've tried to tell myself like, hey, like I shouldn't be, because I'm paying for Dropbox and it just includes Capture as part of what it does. But Loom, the ease of use is so good. So let's talk about what Loom is. Loom is a screen recording tool that you install onto your computer, or you can install it into your Chrome browser, I believe, as well. And then you simply, if you have something that you need to show somebody on your screen, you walk through and it just records your screen and your clicks and everything. So in my world, it's a game changer because, if I'm working with designs, for example, not only can I communicate, to the client can communicate to me. So whenever I deliver a design to somebody, I always I just have a template that says, hey, your deliverables are here. Feel free to reply with any feedback you may have. We highly recommend using a tool like loom.com to record your screen and share your feedback. So then if somebody says, oh yeah, if you've ever tried to do design visual feedback just in a written email, it can just be incredibly confusing. So if they can record their screen and they can show, okay, hey, yeah, right here, this part of the logo I like, but the font's kind of off. I kind of want to see this moved over here. Doing that visual on a screen is it is, talk about efficiency. It just really streamlines things. So that for Loom and just the concept of the screen recording approach in general, I even think if you have a Mac, you can do it. They have a built-in screen easy for me to say, screen capture tool. Don't
worry, Luke, we'll bleep that out.
Yeah. I'm dropping the C-bomb over here. It's bad. But you've got that tool that you can use to capture your screen, and then you can, share that. And the nice thing about Loom though, is that it's recording your screen, but it's simultaneously uploading it to Loom servers. Loom also now has a lot of AI tools built in, so it'll automatically, based on what you said, it transcribes the video, automatically generates a title, a video description. It can automatically summarize the transcript into like talking points. So Loom has been really, really powerful, and I've really enjoyed that one. So that'll be my
you were the one that. Yeah, you were the one that helped me with that because you recorded something over Loom, and I was so excited about it. I was like, oh, this is great. What is this? And I've used it in my own business. If somebody wants to say, hey, where do I go to access my monthly statements? Or, hey, let me show you a comparison of like different mortgage options side by side. I can just record that and send that to a client. Not only do they get to see exactly what I'm seeing, but then they get to watch it on their own time. Doesn't necessarily, for things that don't necessarily require a whole meeting or a Zoom meeting, and then they could watch it back if they're, they're like, oh, I want to see that part again, and it's good for future reference. I recently hired Candace as my assistant with Financial Pathway, and that's been hugely beneficial. But there's a lot of things because she's working virtually. Hey, let me show you how I go in and do this and record a Loom video and send that. And similarly, not only is it better for explanation, but it's better for future reference as well. So that's hugely, hugely beneficial. +1 on Loom.
Yeah, Loom is great. Yeah, it, like you mentioned, that's another thing is documenting your processes and things like that. We talked about building systems earlier. That's something that really helps in that because, people, when they think of, oh man, I got to document this workflow or this process, it seems really daunting because you're like, okay, I got to get out a Word document and step 1, this, step 2. No, you gotta just record your screen with something like Loom. Here's how you do it. And then, like I said, Loom takes it from there. I'm also going to piggyback another tool off of Loom that's similar, but different, and I've found to be better. And this one is called Scribe. So Scribe is it works. For Loom, there's a paid version. I actually do use the paid version. Scribe, I found the free version is sufficient. You just have to. Its limitation in the free version is it only works in the Chrome browser, but Scribe is really good because it's similar to Loom, but it actually captures your screen step by step. So, for example, it's perfect for something like when I'm walking through I was walking through showing somebody how to update something on a website the other day. And it just was like, oh, I click here. And then Loom or Scribe rather in real time is saying, okay, here, and it's showing the screenshot, and then it's using kind of AI to detect what you did and whatever. And then afterwards you can edit those steps and send those out. So for me, what I like it for is when I have something that is a little more of a concrete process that I want to document and show somebody how to do it, where it's like, these are repeatable steps. I've found that to be really useful. And the other thing is because it's not capturing a video. It's actually just capturing your screen out based on where you're clicking. You don't have to be talking and narrating the video. You can just kind of quietly, when I'm sitting at Starbucks, it does feel weird for me to record a Loom sometimes, but when I'm doing a Scribe, it doesn't matter because I'm not talking. So Scribe, I think it's scribe.io is the web address for that.
Awesome.
That's another one very similar to Loom, but it's also got a really unique application.
That's great. So Calendly, Loom, Scribe. What else? Any other tools that you'd say good, time-saving efficiency tools?
Yeah, well, I mentioned Dropbox earlier, and I know Dropbox, their MO is cloud storage, which to me is the best for cloud storage out there. I've tried a lot of them over the years. Dropbox, though, has a lot more features now. I use Dropbox almost daily to transfer large files. They have something called Dropbox Transfer, which is a little different than their actual file folder storage system. So you can, if it's on your Mac, you right click, you go share with transfer, and it uploads it as a temporary link. You can set an expiration date, things like that. You can password protect it if that seems necessary, and send that out. So I really like that. Another thing, though, is Dropbox AI features is really good. So talk about the podcast recording. When I record a podcast for somebody, I take the video and I will upload it to Dropbox because that's just, where I store my files. Well, once it's uploaded and I go and I view that file in the browser on Dropbox's platform, there's a Dropbox AI feature where if I click that, it will, in this case, it's a video. So it's got it's generated a transcription of the video. And I kind of like I would in a chat GPT, I can ask, hey, what would be a good title for this episode? And it generates a title. Or what's a good description? It generates a description. I was actually surprised it was this effective. I did a podcast episode the other day where we were talking through our favorite books and podcasts for the year. And I just asked the question, what are the podcasts mentioned in this episode? And actually did a really good job of identifying those and listing those out. Wow. So I've really liked that feature of Dropbox that they've added there. Of course, everybody is experimenting with AI right now. And I've really enjoyed that, because it's now Dropbox. It's like, it's not just storing your files. It's actually intelligently, helping you, like I said, extract data from them and things like that. So I'm giving a Dropbox a shout out because of those features.
That's great. Similarly, so there's a lot of great tools for like productivity, but what about like for avoiding distractions and being able to focus in? I know Do Not Disturb is a great feature for the iPhone.
Yeah.
Anything that you found to be helpful, whether it's just avoiding checking your email all the time or messages, or just things that help you to focus and eliminate distractions?
Yeah. Well, I mean, Do Not Disturb seems really obvious, but I'm surprised at how many people still don't use it or realize that it exists, because Do Not Disturb has become so much more than just simply, muting some notifications. A few years ago, Apple actually renamed it to focus modes. And so now you can have different Do Not Disturb and focus modes depending on what's going on. So I have one for work, I have one for home, I have one for recording, which actually I kind of forgot to activate. So I'm gonna go do that right now. But I have one for recording that actually, whenever I activate that, well, it just like, it's another level. Like nothing can get through. Whereas on like work mode or whatever, like I have some people that can still get through to me. So that's again, I know that there's probably more. We're looking for a little more innovative solutions, but I just want to, I like to always point out to people that it really does a lot. If you have an iPhone, Mac, iPad, Apple Watch, it all syncs over. And so like, for example, this morning, I was doing some deep work, and, I kind of took a break, and then went over to my messages, and I had like 5 or 6 messages from 3 or 4 different people that had come in during that time. Well, I had no idea. And I was very grateful for Do Not Disturb, because I was like, oh, wow, that would have been a huge distraction had I stopped to, reply to these messages. So Do Not Disturb gets that mention because there's a lot of folks that don't realize all that it does, and that it can really just shut down distraction in a really big way. There's an extension of Do Not Disturb and focus modes called, I've not personally used it, I've heard it recommended, called Opal. And it kind of it taps into the focus modes of iPhone and just really enhances it. So I'm not the guy to really give you the full spiel on it, but I've heard a lot of people recommend it. It's kind of like being able to take the features of Do Not Disturb that are built in and just take them to the next level. So that's one that if you're really looking to go super all in on the distraction free, consider something like Opal.
Yeah. A lot of us are working in jobs where we have the capacity to say, hey, there's some things that I'm going to take on my plate, and there's some things that I may pass off to somebody else, whether it's a manager, whether it's a team approach. In your case, you have an assistant. Talk us through, what have you found to be helpful as far as filtering the things that you delegate versus the things that you tackle for yourself, and maybe some ways that people, because obviously not everybody's in a situation where it's like, oh, I run a business by myself and I have an assistant. So that might be a very specific, but just as you as a business owner, how do you think through a method for deciding what to delegate and what not to delegate?
Yeah. So I'll do a quick callback to when we were talking about systems. It can be really challenging to delegate if you don't have a good system. Because there's this balance, right, in I guess leadership between empowering people to do what you hired them to do, but then also to maintain the standard of quality that you established, right? Like you are you're the business, as far as like, and you started it. And so the reason people are paying you and your company is because of you and the way that you do it. So you have to maintain that. And, like I said, I won't dive into the details, but there was a time where I had a couple of full-time employees. The reason that didn't work out in the long run, one of the many reasons, was that I did not do a good job of having systems and processes in place and then saying, okay, here's that system and process. I want you to own that. I want you to follow that. I want you to improve that. But this is the problem. I just kind of said, oh, cool. You do design and you do the video and blah. And, and then things were honestly kind of a mess. So that's why I'm reemphasizing that is you got to have a system and a process to show someone. Not obviously to do simple stuff. No, because here's a lot of the simple stuff that my assistant does for me is, hey, I need you to call over and, figure this out for me, make this phone call to this person. This is not someone that I need to take time to meet with. A lot of times this is, something like, honestly, a lot of times it's dealing with, I guess we call them vendors. Like we need to get them paid. So just call there, figure out what we need to do to pay them. Thank you, and that's it on that. My assistant does all my invoicing for me. So if I need to send an invoice, she's the one. There's once a month. And again, that's a system that I put in place that she follows. She goes in, she logs in my invoicing system, creates the invoices, gets them ready to go, and then shares them with me so I can kind of take a look and then send them off. So she does the invoicing for me. She handles everything taxes for me in terms of making sure that each year I hit all my deadlines, pay all the quarterly, estimates, actually get a CPA, hired so that they can file my taxes for me. And anything with, appointments, like I said, even personal appointments, like scheduling dentist appointments, doctor's appointments, even certain things like, car, hey, something's up with my car, or I need new tires. Can you call around and find, the best deal and just, schedule an appointment with the shop or whatever. So all kinds of things, research on certain things, hey, I've been looking into, this software or this platform. Can you take a look and see what you think about it and the stuff? So I just kind of rattled off a bunch of stuff there, but there are the simple things like, hey, make a phone call, obviously that there's no need for that system, but for the more advanced stuff, like I said, something like invoicing or anything that obviously deals with financials or client management, like, yeah, you need to have a system in place to show them. And that's been kind of my ongoing, kind of one of the ongoing tasks for me is, okay, I got to take what I do that I've not yet delegated, and I've got to get that system good enough to where I can delegate it off to somebody.
Yeah, absolutely. Is there anything, like we've talked about a lot of different tools, and is there anything that's kind of on your radar right now? Maybe something new or something that you're excited about that, like maybe it's not a proven tool for you, but something that you see a lot of potential for in the future, either personally or for business?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like this is the, obligatory place where you have to talk about AI. We kind of alluded to it earlier. How Dropbox, Loom, a couple of these are taking advantage, or almost every major, at least tech platform is taking advantage of AI and starting to tap into it. And it's fascinating, and it is something that I have really leaned into the past year, or I guess 2 years. That's kind of become a little more prevalent. So I guess I don't know if it's here's a specific AI tool as much as just I've really been fascinated at how I can use it and how I can tap into it. So. Nate, like before we hopped on here, you were like, oh, hey, I need to come up with you had to, for the Money Wise episodes that I think dropped right before ours here.
Yep.
You were like, hey, I need to come up with a quick intro for that. So sorry to give away the secret sauce, but you typed something in the chat GPT and it gave you, hey, here's an idea of what you could say. And you made it your own. And I will say that always make it your own. But ChatGPT or a large language model or whatever they call it like that is really great for saying, hey, here's what I need. And then they spit it out to you.
Give me a structure.
They give you a rough draft, Yeah. Another thing that ChatGPT in particular has been really great for is aggregating analyzing and aggregating data. So for example, like I had this, I had to calculate a cost for something, and I had just kind of a big just on the portal that I'd purchased it through, kind of just a big online invoice that I needed to comb through and figure out, okay, what do these numbers add up to and whatnot. So I just copied and pasted that, and when I pasted it in the ChatGPT, it's kind of a mess. It's like numbers here, but descriptions here, and line items here. But I just said, hey, I need you to extract, the totals here and give me a grand total. And so it did that very efficiently. I've had it build do that similarly, but build out, things, because it'll give you results in a spreadsheet format. So, it'll be like, hey, here's the columns, here's the rows for certain, types of things. As far as I'm trying to think of a specific way I used that the other day, but it's like I do it all the time now. So it's like, oh yeah, I'm just, hey, here, give me a spreadsheet that looks like this, or that uses this data. So there's a lot of potential there. Nate, we were on a phone call a few months ago, or a few weeks ago, I can't remember, but we were talking about something, and Apple had just pushed the update with their Apple Intelligence to the phone. Yeah. And now they have a feature where you can record the call and it summarizes it for you. So say, hey, Nate, I'm going to try this. I
was just on a call yesterday, and the guy did that because he's like, is that okay? I'm like, yeah, of course. But yeah.
But I've not used it much, but that time it worked really well. I was really pleased with how it turned out. So yeah, there's all kinds of applications of it that we could talk about. But here's my biggest challenge is it can save you. People are like, oh, AI is going to take our jobs and everything. Not necessarily. It's just going to make you more efficient at yours. So in theory, does that mean that, but it's kind of like the same thing as, like, I guess you could say, what people do before the ability to make a phone call. Well, I guess they just sent a telegram, or they sent things before email, they sent things by mail. Well, what did that do? Okay, it may have eliminated some of the postal service workers. I don't know, but now it makes what you do much more valuable. So
yeah, it's a net benefit for sure.
So you can be in theory now you can do more because of AI, and so you're worth more. Right. So that's, to me, it's like, don't be afraid of it. Figure out how to use it, because it's certainly something. I think the church is always really guilty of being like late to the game, because they want to. A lot of churches want to find something really, really wicked and evil about new technology. I remember that was what happened with social media. But then, a decade later, you're like, oh, I have to use this, right, or I'm irrelevant. So I would just challenge people, like conservatives and Christians tend to be really hesitant to adopt new technology. No, I would say don't be hesitant. Don't be afraid. Just learn how you can use it, because somebody's going to figure out how to use it, so might as well be the good folks.
Yeah, I feel like, in the same way that our generation was the first one that really grew up symbiotically with the internet and with social media and its inception. And we've just learned, that's just been part of our lives. We're just so integrated into utilizing those things. Similarly, Gen Z, I saw a statistic the other day about how many Gen Z workers use AI or use like ChatGPT. And it's like something like 92%. Like, it's an insane number, because it's very intuitive for them. Why would I not use this amazing tool that it's the same way that we approach Google, we Google stuff, AI. And I think that's just going to be part of just part of how we interact with the world, in the same way that we're just so used to typing stuff into Google, to a search engine, and looking for results. AI will take a similar role, but allow us to go even further with it. Here, and this has been great. I think my 3 big takeaways listening to everything that you've been talking about is, first of all, the importance of time blocking and making sure that you set aside time for the most important stuff and don't allow the tedious things to bleed over into that, working on the business, not just in the business. Also, secondly, systematizing your processes and using tools to do that as you work. I know for me, I don't like to get into the weeds on little details. I just find it just so boring, and I just try to avoid it at all costs. But building systems is really just documenting the things that you're already doing And there's great ways now, easier ways than ever, to be able to do that through Loom, through Scribes, through some of these great tools, and the importance of doing that. But then thirdly, I think it just speaks to this what we've just been talking about these last few minutes, is stay adaptable. Don't get so stuck and ironclad in one way of doing things that you're giving up on future productivity, future efficiency. So many great tools, and the pace is so rapid. But kind of keep your ear to the ground and be aware. And that's why I'm so glad to have you on the podcast to talk about some of these things, because if you'll stay a little bit adaptable, you'll stay moldable. There's some great ways to do things even better than was ever possible. So before we wrap up, Luke, please tell our listeners about Must Increase, and specifically about podcast production, because that's something that you've really you're focusing a lot more of your effort and attention on.
Yeah. Well, again, you can, I guess the simplest thing to do would be to probably just shoot me an email, luke@mustincrease.com. If for any reason you want to get in touch with me. From there, I can send you my Calendly link and we can schedule a call. And we can kind of talk a little bit more about how I could help you in particular. So that's just probably the best course of action right now if you're interested in the podcast production. Or like I said, I still do offer the other services. Not like I've discontinued the graphic design or websites or anything like that. But yeah, the podcast is in particular what I'm looking to do. And I would say, my pitch is, like I said, the podcasting is huge right now. Whether you are a pastor or a business owner, or just somebody who, I always just say, because people are like, oh, why start another podcast? There's a bunch out there. You're right, there are a bunch, but podcasting is a great starting point if you're looking to share content that you believe is going to be helpful and valuable to others. It's much more simple than trying to blog or come up with clever TikToks. Sitting down and talking, having a little bit more of a long form conversation is a great starting point to share what you know and what you have to share with others. So that would be my challenge, regardless. And even if you you can't afford to, pay somebody to do your podcast, that's great. I'd love to talk to you and I can show you how to get started on your own. So yeah, again, luke@mustincrease.com. That's my email address. I'd love to hear from you and help you out in any way I can.
Yeah, awesome. Luke's been a big help to me, and I hope he can be a big help to some other of the listeners. So thanks again, Luke, for being on the podcast today, and we will see you all on the next episode.